Hey, welcome back to the Big Book Deep Dive here on Progress and Perfection. You can find more information on our website. You can contact us. All the links for that will be in the description below. My name is Eamon. I'm joined by my good friend John. Here we go.
Speaking of ball inflating, most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors, telling them what we are trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors, no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. That's kind of interesting to me. I wonder how applicable that is nowadays.
Yeah, not incredibly so.
You know what I'm saying? Because I think like nowadays your creditors would be like a credit card company or something.
Yeah. This speaks like it's a person down at Main Street at the bank that you need to go talk to, which is absolutely true. But
Sure.
But yeah, it's more or less, let's get the bills out, see what you pay.
Right.
What you owe, what you can pay, get on a credit plan, get on a credit plan if necessary.
Yeah. What about, what if you owe your drug dealer money, dude?
I cut ties with all those people. I think if anything, I was owed something at the end. So,
Oh, I'm sure I owe plenty of money to some drug dealers, but I'm not about to go back. And I don't know. Maybe you're out there.
I'm not going to be seeking that out.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to find you and give you your money back.
Sorry about that.
I don't know. But I mean, for real, like, does that mean we owe, like, do we need to go make restitution with our drug dealers?
I think it might depend a little bit on the circumstance, but I would default to no, we don't enter back into dangerous scenarios.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like under any circumstance, stay away from that world.
I would think so.
Part of getting sober is getting out of the drunk world into the sober world.
Right.
And, cut ties.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Call up your crack dealer and be like, yo.
Hey, buddy.
JB, my bad. Remember that time I owed you?
Mind if I come over?
Yeah, I'm going to stop by, right? That probably doesn't seem like a good idea. No. Perhaps we've committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We have already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we are divorced and have remarried but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She is indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble, too. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything.
Yeah, so once again, there's not an end-all be-all rule here other than we got to be willing. Mm-hmm. And if it's one of those things where it's going to take what it takes to stay sober. Right. And if it means going to these tough situations, then we need to be willing to do that. Yeah. It may or may not mean that, in certain circumstances. Mm-hmm. And there again, I believe it's counsel with another person, a trusted friend, a sponsor, a counselor that can guide us in that where there is question like, is this the right thing?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the wiggle room there. Ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. It doesn't say what that right thing is.
That's right.
Right. So to your point, the right thing in some situations may be to avoid the dangerous, precarious situation. Yeah. The right thing in some situations may be to like nut up or shut up and go pay your alimony.
That's right.
At risk of, facing whatever fines or criminal time.
Yep.
Usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we were not to be hasty and foolish martyr. Therefore, we are not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We suggested he write his first wife, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. He did, and also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course she did not, and the whole situation has long since been adjusted. Some grace.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't the typical spiteful woman I see in my practice, though, I'll tell you that much right now. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he is one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. Yeah, we know. We can tell, right? Yeah. I mean, he went to church and stood up and huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that, right?
Yeah, I'm just seeing Cedar Springs service, like James gets done, gives the benediction. Hold on just a second. Hold on, everybody.
I need your attention, please.
Yeah, you get up and go up there to the stands and be like, I just want to let you know, Mr. Haslam, that thing that happened years ago. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's going to happen.
That'd be incredible.
I don't know about that.
That would be incredible.
I don't know. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we are mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt it. In this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people, but drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he is having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. What do you think about that?
I mean, a lot of sticky territory there.
Mm-hmm.
willingness still prevails, and above all the other circumstances, I think this is where counsel is quite needed. But yeah, it does kind of feel like, well, gosh, are we going to keep hiding stuff? And when is that the right thing to do?
Right.
And then they're alluding to the fact that sometimes it can be the right thing to do. And I guess I believe that. I would want to make damn sure that it was before I was in this situation. Hopefully I'm never in this situation. But yeah, do you see that to where it's more harm? And I can see where it could be more harm if it's a complete, if you're trying to just feel better by confession.
Right.
Then that's just going to bring down, in this case, the example that's just going to destroy your wife on top of the drinking stuff that she knew about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely the case where a lot of times when people have affairs, the man feels amazing because they have all this guilt and shame off their shoulders, but they've just given their wife a bomb.
Yeah. It's like, here, I'll give it to you to carry now.
And it just blows the entire world up.
Yeah.
However, I think best practices indicates that that type of disclosure does need to take place. The detail of the disclosure, I think, is a whole different ballgame. I don't think that a man can live in secret in relation to his wife. That's why I think that, like, the big detail definitely needs to be told. I've never seen a man operate in a healthy relationship with their wife
and be able to carry
that they have a secret that they're just not going to tell their wife. But yeah, I think it's kind of what you're alluding to. The details of the infidelity, depending upon the temperament of the wife, may or may not be necessary. Because there's some things that you just can't unhear. And that holds for your wife too. And if you are just killing her with these details, even though she may say, I want to know everything, suddenly she can never go to this restaurant. She can never go to this town. She can never go to, every time she sees a whatever car, it's a trigger to the pain of the experience, And so, like, that's where I think the discretion really does come in handy, both for the offender and the offended, to seek counsel on both ends to sort of gauge, like, okay, yeah, disclosure needs to occur. What's the level of this disclosure? What's the necessary level that needs to be entertained?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. But I think it's I think it's part of the total house cleaning that just has to happen for alcoholics in order to get sober. You can't, it doesn't make sense to me that if I'm an alcoholic and I'm in a program of rigorous honesty, that I still have a secret.
It's not really rigorous honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, I get what they're saying. But I think you got to give the goods up, man. And
that's more to do with married folks.
Yes, for sure.
In this specific example,
sure.
Like going through addiction and into recovery as a couple, as a married unit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And just as an interesting point of reflection. So, like, there's plenty of detail of my story because I met my wife after recovery, but there's plenty of detail of my story that my wife doesn't know.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm trying to keep secrets from her, because I don't want to harm her.
Yeah.
I don't want to give her just
same. Right. Because both of us met our wives after years of recovery.
Right. They have enough. My wife knows enough detail.
Yep.
And there's no need to terrorize her.
Doesn't do anything productive.
No, not at all. So yeah, to your point. Yeah. This is definitely speaking in the context of a married couple. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. And that's referring to that idea of disclosing who the person is that they were pointing out paragraph prior. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with that most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. Again, maybe.
Perhaps not.
Yeah, maybe. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?"
And yet that's exactly what we think when we get here oftentimes. If we just stop, that'll be enough. Can't y'all see that I'm not drinking anymore? Can't you be happy for me? Give me some attaboys, pats on the back.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best line in this passage. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. You moron? No. It's not enough. This is baseline.
Right. Yeah, but how many times have we seen it, though?
Countless.
You know, like, I don't understand why they're so mad.
Yeah. What's the big deal?
I got clean. I don't understand. They're still pissed off at me. Yeah. It's because, that was the symptom of the problem.
Well, and hopefully by this point in the story, we've done a thorough and honest inventory. That's the whole point of these steps being in the particular order they're at, is if we were honest in a fourth and fifth step, and we've actually invited God in to soften our hearts, we ought to be here not realizing or realizing that, oh, wow, I'm at the very start line.
Yeah.
I have really effed things up.
Yeah.
Much worse than I had thought when I was drinking and using.
Yeah, for sure.
And having that posture that we've talked about in weeks past of the beginning, I think, of humility. This is where it begins.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think you make a fair point. If you get to this point in the process and you're still asking yourself that question, you may need to go back to step one.
Absolutely. Well, and hey, remember step 6 and 7?
Yeah.
Totally. Those brief paragraphs, but that's what it's talking about. Yeah. We went home and carefully reviewed the propositions so far, or the steps so far. You can still carefully review that as you go into 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
Because not often, sometimes there will be stuff that you have missed, that you have not gotten honest about, that you have not really turned over.
That's right.
And that's fine. Go back.
Right.
That's great to realize.
Right. I can remember when my sponsor told me to do that the first time. I was like, what? I was so pissed. I was still so pride. Right. I was still so full of pride. I was like, what are you talking about? I've already done all that. It's your problem. You know who I am?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I do.
I sure do,
Time
buddy.
to go back to step 3. It's like, dang it. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Hear, hear. How many people you see stumble into that problem, bro? And I think the book's referenced it several times.
Well, and we should not minimize how long this period of reconstruction is going to be. Because, dude, I went to treatment like Thanksgiving week pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's like expecting things to change by Christmas. Like, all right, let's get this under control. By the end of the year, I'll be back home. Everything will be. I mean, this is a years long process. It really is. And that's tough to wrap your head around. And I don't want that to be a discouraging thought to people who are in their first days, weeks, months. But it's good to recognize that you're not abnormal when things are not all hunky-dory after 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 months. It takes time. And hopefully there's a progression. There's the progress that we're making along that. But for me, I mean, it was years before I felt, and again, it was the sense, maybe it was better than what I felt them to be, but it was years before I felt as though all these relationships had really been mended as fully as they could be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. I think it's like it's a 2-path deal. It's like a 2-journey deal. Like your journey towards sober-mindedness can occur relatively quickly. But yeah, the reconstruction process, just like it's saying, 10 years, 20 years, who knows how long that process takes. You know, and I think it's important that we realize, like, as we're wreaking havoc, as the tornado or hurricane or whoever we were, like, we hurt people and we hurt them deeply, you know, and like, we don't necessarily recognize the depth of that hurt a lot of times. And so it takes a long ass time for people to heal from those wounds that we've caused. I think one of the great parts that, like, I think you got to experience it, I know I did, was like the whole family week thing. I mean, it was awful and horrible, but at the same time, you got to really hear how viscerally you hurt the ones that you love. Because I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. No, there was a revealing thing for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea I'd hurt them that much. You know, I'd pushed my poor parents to the brink of divorce because of me. Yeah, I had no clue. I'm so selfish and self-absorbed and self-centered, and I was like, oh, I've got to see all these problems. You know, but yeah, man, it takes a long time to heal those wounds.
A lot of one days at a time.
Decades, sometimes.
Yeah.
There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. A letter. That's awesome. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. That's a little gospel God shot at you there.
A little bit.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises?
We think not.
They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And for those who have been around the program for a while, those are the promises.
The old 9-step promises.
The promises, okay? How do you feel about those promises? Have you experienced those promises?
Yeah, reading through these again, and I haven't read this in a while, but it's very familiar. We used to read these, so many meetings, we'll read this at the start of the meeting. Yeah, I think I've experienced all of these. The thing that kind of held me up a little while earlier on was the expectation that, all right, if I get here, I'm going to get all this all at once. And it's like going to be same as the misconception I had of my fifth step, where it was like, okay, that's done. I did the next right thing. Let's keep going. These have come in fits and spurts for me. But I think more than the fifth step, this was the point in my first working of the steps where I really did start to feel some peace and some security in my sobriety, physical sobriety, but also in the relationships just generally with people. This is where that really deep-seated insecurity of just, I was not comfortable in my own skin for a long time in sobriety. This is where it started to kind of change. We will know where is it? It's this self-seeking will slip away. That started happening. The kind of the peace started slipping in, and the idea that I sort of had a semblance of a purpose. Because this was also when I started reaching my hand back and helping other alcoholics. And this is the point where you've done enough work at this point to where you can start guiding somebody else through the steps. And that for me was as critical of a component as actually making these amends. Because I told you last time, I didn't have a ton of go out and do the amends stuff. I had a few, and I had family stuff. But the beginning to pass it or to pay it forward really started working some of these promises into my life to where I started. And again, it's not about feelings, but it is when I started to feel like I was getting to that point of, oh, I got a chance. I can kind of see how sobriety can be fun and how I'm, peaceful and kind of more secure in myself. Just the beginnings of it. But it slipped away slowly too. So I go back and forth, like the valleys and the peaks of just emotional sobriety for that first few years. So that was my big takeaway. It was like, I want it all and I want to be able to hold on to it. And, God bless you if that happens. But I mean, I've had all this stuff occur and it's most of them are kind of a part of my life today on some level. But for a long time it was, I can grab a piece of this, I can grab a piece of that. But I need to just keep leaning forward in this kind of hopeful expectation that more will be revealed.
I love that. The thing that I can remember, like that line, I mean, it's so whatever. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it.
Talk about that.
Well, it was like this understanding that like I have a story and that story has meaning and it has purpose and it has significance. And like all of the story has meaning and purpose and significance. And the goal wasn't, and I thought it was like early in sobriety, like I just wanted to forget about that part of my life and move past it, and just kind of like, okay, good Lord, shut the door. I don't want to revisit any of that stuff. But it suddenly, like, I don't know, it shined a light on the idea that that part of my life does have meaning and it does have purpose. And it was causal. Like, and it's interesting because I think it clicked recently too, like even just part of that promise that we're referring to there. I've been reading this book on, what's it called? Society of the Snow. Okay, so it was about the plane crash in the Andes back in the 70s with the rugby team, and the famous, of course, the famous part of the story is like that they had to eat, the people that had died in there.
Right.
But there's a more significant part of it, if you will just bear with me a second. Let me find it. because it really did crystallize reading this one guy's story in there. His name was Nando, and he was one of the guys who led the final expedition that actually found the farmer, basically found civilization. Okay, but I think it's relevant to that promise that I was talking about that really resonates with me. I sent this to my wife. I often ask God why I had to suffer so much, but reading that book on those guys trapped in the Andes Mountains for 70 days gave me the answer. I wouldn't trade the amount of suffering I have endured for anything, because without it, I wouldn't have you and these beautiful kids. Mm-hmm. And it was just this idea that like all of it's purposeful. All of it leads me to this moment now. And without it, I would not have had my wife. Like I wouldn't have had my kids. And I wouldn't trade that for any amount of suffering I've ever endured.
Nope, me either.
You know, and so it sheds light on sort of the beauty of like, yeah, we don't have to like shut the door on the past. We don't have to regret the past. In fact, we can invite the past into our present and put a new lens on it, you know, as the Lord shines light into it. And he's like, look, I was there, I was there, I was there, I was there. And you connect all these beautiful dots and it leads you into the, I don't know, just the preciousness of the story that God's given to me. So that's what really resonates to me. And it always has in the 9-step promises was just that idea. I mean, the rest of it's wonderful too. You know what I'm saying? But that's the part that's always spoke to me.
Well, that's the center point, right? Because I mean, you get here and you can't fathom how you would not always regret all those things.
Right.
And it doesn't condone or say that any of it's good, but I've had the same exact experience, and I've talked with my wife in the exact same way, and you know, it's unfathomable to me to not have the life that I have today, which was all my past was necessarily a part of that. That's right. None of it would have happened without it. Right. And furthermore, both of us, you for your profession, you know, you wouldn't be who's to know what the profession would be, but your line of work and the work that I do with other alcoholics, you know, that we get to share with others out of our own experience. And we'll talk about that more, you know, for the rest of the book. Yeah. But that's how it gets turned to good. And so while I look back and I'm like, well, if I had it over to do it over, well, I would have made different choices in those same situations. But I also don't want to sacrifice anything that I currently have as a result of it.
That's right.
And I think we do have a valuable, for those of us that have turned the corner, gotten and stayed straight, you know, we have that unique ability to be able to speak into other people's lives who are having trouble of the same variety.
That's right.
And I mean, it's just so clear to me that God has placed us in those positions and people in our lives for that reason.
Yeah.
That it makes me grateful and it helps me look at my past in the right light rather than just selfish regret, because that's what it is when I regret it. It's just me selfishly wanting different good things, you know?
Yeah. That's good, man. All right. So that's step 9.
Step 9. That's a wrap.
On to step 10.
Step 10 is next.
Step 10 is next. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, my brother.
Likewise, dude. Hey, thanks for listening. You can find more info at progressandperfection.com, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.